What if I told you the most powerful weapon against poverty isn't a gun or a government loan, but a bag of dirt? Not a metaphor, a literal bag, filled with red earth, tamped 20 times, and laid side by people who have nothing except the will to build something greater. This is not a story of technology. This is not a tale of billion-dollar foreign aid. This is Burkina Faso. And the revolution you're about to witness doesn't come with explosions. It comes with shovels, with hands calloused from labor, with roads carved from determination. In a country where over 60% of the people live in rural areas, where poverty and isolation fuel instability and extremist threats, roads are not infrastructure, they are lifelines. A school without a road is an empty building. A hospital without access is a graveyard. A farm without connection is a trap of eternal poverty. And so, Burkina Faso, under President Ibrahim Traoré, launched a dream: 1,000 kilometers of rural roads, built not by foreign contractors or imported machinery, but by communities themselves, using a forgotten Japanese technique known as Do Nou: dirt, bags, human hands. The world scoffs, but on the red earth of the Sahel, this technique is not primitive, it's prophetic. No bulldozers, no corruption, no waiting, just soil and sweat and something few nations dare to believe in anymore: collective self-reliance. So now I ask you, if a bag of dirt can build a road, can it rebuild a country? If the world has ignored African solutions for too long, is it time we start listening to the soil beneath our feet? This is not just about Burkina Faso. This is about what happens when a poor nation decides it's tired of waiting. Stay with us. What you're about to see might just change the way you look at development. Forever. Do Nou as a weapon of security and sovereignty. But in Burkina Faso, a road is never just a road. It's a front line. Because in the Sahel, terror doesn't arrive with tanks. It arrives with isolation, with silence between villages, with that invisible line where government presence ends and insurgency begins. For decades, rural communities in northern and eastern Burkina Faso have lived in a vacuum, physically cut off, economically abandoned, emotionally forgotten. No roads meant no help, no soldiers, no teachers, no doctors. And into that void stepped armed groups offering not just weapons, but answers. Simple, ruthless: join us or be forgotten. This is the battlefield President Ibrahim Traoré knows by heart. A soldier turned statesman, he understands. Infrastructure is not just development, it's defense. Each Do Nou road built becomes a lifeline, a path for the army to move quickly, a route for emergency aid, medicine, and teachers, a way to connect hope to the most isolated corners of the country. And unlike billion-dollar highways, Do Nou moves fast. Villagers compact 2 kilometers of earth with nothing but muscle, bags, and rhythm. They don't just lay soil, they plant a flag. They say, this land is not abandoned. We are Burkina Faso. And that, more than any drone or surveillance camera, is how you defeat terrorism, not just with bullets, but with belonging. Ask yourself, what makes a man pick up a gun against his own country? Is it ideology, or is it years of being ignored, unseen, unheard? Do Nou interrupts that silence. It gives young men something else to carry, not a gun, but a tool, a mission, a paycheck, a reason to stay and build, not destroy and flee. For the first time, rural Burkina Faso is no longer terrain to be patrolled, it's territory to be empowered. Imagine a nation where roads are not imposed from the top down, but built from the bottom up, not handed down, but claimed by sweat. Imagine every region having the tools, the training, and the right to build its own future. That's not just decentralization, that's defensive democracy. It's a new doctrine of national security where asphalt is optional, but trust, soil, and hands become the first line of defense. And it all starts with one haunting question: can a dirt road stop a war before it starts? International reactions, shifting power, and the Do Nou dilemma. Not everyone is celebrating this quiet revolution, because Do Nou, in all its simplicity, challenges the very foundation of who holds the power. In a region long dominated by foreign aid, multinational contractors, and geopolitical stability packages, Burkina Faso's decision to bypass all of it has sent shockwaves through places like Paris and Washington. For decades, France funneled billions into West Africa, but always with strings attached, always through middlemen, always slow, expensive, and deeply political. Roads weren't just for transport, they were tools of influence, of dependency. So now imagine this: a small country building 1,000 kilometers of rural roads with no French engineers, no IMF loans, and no foreign approval. That's not just infrastructure, that's defiance. Do Nou says, "We can do this without you," and that statement, it terrifies the old system. There are no contracts to skim, no consulting firms to feed, no bureaucrats to delay, just villagers building roads that work. If it succeeds in Burkina Faso, what's stopping it from spreading to Mali, to Niger, to Chad? What if Africa's poorest nations suddenly realize they don't have to beg for development, they can build it? That's a threat no drone, no diplomat, no data analyst can shoot down. And so, the pushback begins. NGOs raise questions about safety and sustainability. Donors demand feasibility studies for roads already built. Foreign experts offer to improve a system they barely understand. But on the ground, the truth is obvious. Do Nou roads exist, they work, and they're changing lives today, while others are still writing proposals. Security forces now reach villages they couldn't access for years. Teachers return to schools once deemed unreachable. Medical trucks roll into clinics buried in the bush. So let's be honest, the problem is not that Do Nou doesn't work. The problem is that it works without them, because Do Nou shifts power. From ministries to villages, from donors to doers, from foreign aid to local faith. And that shift is dangerous, not because it's violent, but because it's contagious. If Burkina Faso proves that infrastructure can be built without debt, that security can be strengthened without foreign troops, and that hope can return without permission, then the post-colonial model begins to crack, and the silence from abroad, it's louder than applause. You won't see Do Nou on CNN, you won't hear it in NATO briefings, but believe this: intelligence agencies are watching, because what starts with roads can end in independence. One bag of dirt at a time, simple technology that might save a nation. The Do Nou technique sounds almost too simple to change the course of a nation, but simplicity can be revolutionary. You take a plastic bag, you fill it with red laterite soil, rich in iron found across the Sahel. You add just a bit of water, and then you tamp it exactly 20 times. No more, no less. Why 20? Because that's the magic number that compresses the soil into a solid brick-like block, strong enough to stack, stable enough to build with. Now, place those bags side by side, row by row, layer by layer. Top it off with gravel or more earth. And just like that, you've built a road. No road rollers, no cement mixers, no blueprints in French. Just bags, dirt, and hands. This is Do Nou, and in Burkina Faso, it may be the most practical line item in the entire national budget. Because here, building roads isn't a luxury. It's a lifeline. The government's goal, 1,000 kilometers of rural roads. Not someday, not maybe. Now. Why? Because lives depend on it. Without roads, farmers are trapped in villages, crops rot in the fields, children drop out of school, women give birth with no doctor for miles, and young men, bored, broke, and bitter, turn toward guns, not growth. Do Nou breaks that cycle because, unlike traditional asphalt roads that cost hundreds of thousands per kilometer, Do Nou roads cost a fraction, and they don't need imports, experts, or loans. They need training and trust in the people. When a Do Nou project begins, something else begins too. A movement. Unemployed youth are trained, not pitied. They learn to choose the right soil, control moisture, tamp with consistency. Within hours, they go from forgotten to indispensable, and when the road is finished, they own it. Not legally, emotionally, because it's their sweat, their pride, their proof that they are not waiting anymore. Ask yourself, would you rather wait 5 years for a perfect road from a foreign contractor or walk today on a road your neighbors built with their hands? That's why Do Nou matters. It's not a charity program, not a stopgap. It's a philosophy. And President Ibrahim Traoré understands this deeply. He knows that in a country where youth unemployment is rampant, the greatest danger is not lack of funds, but lack of purpose. With Do Nou, purpose becomes visible. Villages that were once silent now echo each morning with the rhythm of tamping wood. Communities organize, elders supervise, children watch and believe. Even local officials begin to see possibilities. With just a small budget and no bulldozers, they can finally bring development to the places no one else would touch. Of course, Do Nou isn't perfect. It can't carry heavy trucks. It doesn't survive long floods. It's not for highways or military routes, but for local paths to schools, clinics, markets. It's more than enough, and what isn't durable can be repaired by the same hands that built it. No permit, no red tape, no foreign contractor, because the power of Do Nou isn't just in the road, it's in the people who build it. How Do Nou is redefining power in Burkina Faso. There's something almost invisible happening in Burkina Faso. It doesn't show up on satellite maps. It doesn't make the front page. But if you walk the red roads built by Do Nou, you'll feel it. A shift in power, a shift in pride, a shift in purpose. Because when a village builds its own road, something else gets built. 2. Dignity. For the first time in decades, rural citizens are not waiting. Not for aid, not for orders, not for permission from the capital. They are acting, deciding, moving. And in a country long held hostage by both foreign manipulation and internal dysfunction, that's not just symbolic, it's a social earthquake. Young people, once lost, jobless, drifting, are now the engine of transformation. Each bag they tamp is a statement. We are not the problem, we are the solution. And that message spreads fast. In one province, local women formed a cooperative to make soil bags. In another, village elders set up a road committee to handle maintenance. Children are growing up watching their parents build roads, not just complain about their absence. This is not development as usual. This is development as rebellion. And its effects are multiplying. Local mayors, once helpless, are now organizing Do Nou brigades, training youth, managing materials, creating incentive plans. Some governors propose Do Nou zones where bureaucracy is suspended, so grassroots progress can run free. The central government is beginning to adapt, because when the periphery stops begging and starts building, the center must evolve, or be left behind. But not everyone's comfortable with this. Political elites are uneasy. What happens when people realize they don't need favors to get things done? What happens when a village can repair its own road faster and cheaper than the Ministry of Infrastructure? This is not just a shift in policy. It's a revolution of expectations. And expectations, once raised, don't come back down. Citizens are no longer content with survival. They're asking bigger questions. If we can build roads, why not schools? If we can organize labor, why not clinics? If we can govern a project, why not govern ourselves? That's the real tremor shaking Burkina Faso, not just economic, political, democratic, human. Do Nou is unlocking more than roads. It's unlocking political imagination. And in a region where democracy is often reduced to slogans, imagination may be the most dangerous and most hopeful force of all. You can see it in the smallest acts. A young man filling a pothole without being told, a grandmother gathering neighbors to plan a bridge, a mayor choosing people over paperwork. Do Nou hasn't just laid roads, it's awakened something long buried, the spirit of agency, of belonging, of ownership. And now, that spirit is asking, if we can organize and build without corruption, why can't we lead the same way? If we can solve infrastructure from the ground up, why not solve leadership the same way? In a land where promises have always outnumbered results, Do Nou is no longer a theory, it's proof. And that kind of proof is contagious. The question is no longer, will Do Nou work? It's, what else can we do once we stop waiting? You can see it in the smallest details. A young man who fills a pothole without being told. A grandmother who gathers the village to plan a footbridge. A mayor who finally says no to waiting and yes to doing. Do Nou has done more than lay down roads. It has unearthed a spirit buried under decades of neglect, a spirit of agency, of dignity, of ownership. And now, that spirit is asking even harder questions. If we can organize and build without corruption, why can't our politics do the same? If we can solve infrastructure from the ground up, why can't we govern ourselves from the ground up? In a land where promises have always outnumbered progress, Do Nou is not just a technique. It's proof. Proof that you don't need billions to begin. Proof that real power doesn't come from outside contracts, but from inside the community. Proof that a bag of dirt, tamped 20 times, can carry a whole nation forward. And that kind of proof spreads. Already, whispers of Do Nou are moving beyond borders. In Mali, local leaders are watching. In Chad, engineers are asking questions. In Niger, youth movements are looking to Burkina Faso, not for money, but for inspiration. And maybe, just maybe, this isn't just about Burkina Faso anymore. Maybe it's about a new chapter in Africa's story, one where development doesn't come down from plains, but rises from the soil. One where sovereignty isn't written in constitutions, but in the hands of those who build their own roads. And so, I leave you with this. If a bag of dirt can rebuild a country, what else have we been underestimating? If Burkina Faso can pave a new future with nothing but soil and will, what's stopping the rest of us? Because sometimes, the most powerful revolutions don't start with explosions. They start with a quiet sound of earth being tamped 20 times at dawn by people who are done waiting